Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I have a special guest with me, Sean Ford, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Algorand. A lot of exciting things happening at Algorand, and we're going to talk about it today. Sean, great to have you.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate you having me on.
Sean, before we get into Algorand, maybe you can give us a rundown on your background. What did you do before you got into the crypto blockchain industry, and why did you decide to get into the industry?
Yeah, just I guess the short version. I've been in tech for over 20 years, lots of different companies. Founded a couple of companies back in the day, one called Upromise with a few people, and then all the way up through Oracle and then LogMeIn. So I've seen a lot of different emerging tech and experience sort of the IoT phase of tech where that was the new craze and saw sort of some of the characteristics of that. And I guess ultimately what I did was I stepped back and said, what do we think? What do I think the next wave of truly disruptive technology is going to be? And it was very easy to start focusing in on blockchain, looking at the markets and how they started to evolve around really more substantive projects rather than speculative behavior, and felt like there was a real chance if I could find the right set of people and the right tech to be a part of building something really just unbelievably disruptive and revolutionary. And I think I've found that in Algorand.
Very cool. So, give us an overview of Algorand. I've certainly read up on it. I think some folks know bits and pieces. It's a proof of stake blockchain, but how did the inception? How did it start? What's its mission? What are the use cases and clients that you're targeting?
Right. That's a lot of stuff. So I would say that, so the project itself, Algorand, is the brainchild of Silvio Micali. So Silvio's a professor at MIT. He's a Turing Award winner, which is, for people watching, essentially the Nobel Prize for computer science equivalent. He is oftentimes, he's mentioned as one of the founders of modern day cryptography. So you have a luminary in the field with an entire team that he worked with of equally accomplished cryptographers and computer scientists. And so they took a look and said, blockchain technology seems pretty interesting, but it seems like it has a number of things that we could make better.
Mm-hmm.
And so he stepped in and conceived with this team the first white paper on what Algorand could be, which was a pure proof of stake blockchain, different from your classic proof of work or delegated proof of stake, those types of things. This one was really built to scale. It was built obviously with as a decentralized protocol, and we know it was very secure by design. But he added a few things where he made it, very minimal compute required, where it's just simple and inclusive for network participation, energy efficient, absolutely, more scalable than anything that we saw as a decentralized proof of stake protocol in the marketplace. And because of those characteristics, we started to really attract a number of interesting companies that maybe had thought about doing something in blockchain, but really didn't, I don't want to say trust it completely, but given the fact that several other chains fork, sometimes you're not sure of transaction finality, and in both of those things, we've solved those with Algorand. Sure. All of a sudden, the confidence was there that we were bringing tech that we really thought could address a number of the basic business needs for sort of traditional and enduring businesses out there that had, to this point, only really just dabbled.
Got it. And would you consider Ethereum as your biggest competitor? I know they're trying to move to proof of stake. So I'm just curious about that dynamic.
Yeah, I think, so I would say it's very funny. We haven't really thought about having a direct competitor, and that isn't to dodge your question. I think a lot of times in the industries I've been in, you focus quite a lot on what the competitive dynamic is and what your competitive positioning is. I think Ethereum is great technology and certainly revolutionary in what it's done. I do think that without Ethereum, we wouldn't have been able to really learn as much as we have about how to create something that I think is incredibly simple to use, incredibly scalable. And really, one of the things about the design that we put in place at Algorand is we built to this point all of the sort of major capabilities, whether it's asset creations or if you're looking at atomic swaps or you're looking at Algorand smart contracts, all within the layer one level of the protocol. And there's a number of benefits there, the least of which is not that it removes a lot of errors, a lot of human errors out of it. And it also allows everyone to benefit from any sort of operability upgrades or things that we might do to improve those capabilities. So I think Ethereum has done a very good job sort of capturing a particular part of the market. And I think that we are certainly seeing a lot of people come to us because of the simplicity with which they're able to do the things I just mentioned and reduce all sorts of typical errors that may occur in other chains out there.
Got it. And I know you guys have been making a lot of progress. We're seeing a lot of partnerships and different initiatives. So the first I wanted to ask you about was the Algorand Foundation allocating 250 million Algo tokens for the development of the Algorand ecosystem. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, so I'm at Algorand Inc., which is the open source technology company, and the foundation is obviously an independent entity. And with that, they've done a number of great things. One of them is the program that you just described, which is really trying to accelerate development on the ecosystem overall, equivalent of 40 to 50 million USD, which is a non-trivial amount. And it's really designed, it's designed broadly to fund a number of things: development, infrastructure, education, community engagement. So it's got a broad remit. As part of this program, there's a few areas that they've highlighted. They're looking for innovative research, obviously development tools. One of the beautiful things about the Algorand blockchain is that we've really built it for inclusivity. We hope that it's the type of place where developers and businesses want to come build something real and participate in becoming a part of a broader global but borderless economy. So obviously we're looking at development tools and just education and community initiatives, and people can apply for grants. We expect the foundation will do great things and hopefully bring a bunch of new innovation that the community can really call its own.
That's a great initiative. I like that, giving the resources for folks to build the ecosystems, grants, and so forth. Now, a very important topic I think many folks are curious about because of the emergence of CBDCs. We heard news that Algorand was chosen by the Marshall Islands to potentially build their digital currency, their CBDC. Can you shed some light on that? How did that relationship come about, and maybe where they're at in their timeline of development?
Yeah, of course. So that's a great question. We're very excited about that partnership. So a couple of things. First, the Marshall Islands worked with a technology partner called SFB and really enlisted their help to go out and do a broad evaluation as to which blockchain would fit their needs, and they sort of had the most confidence in to be able to achieve what I think everyone agrees is a pretty ambitious goal. So SFB went out, did a bunch of research, and then contacted us among a number of other blockchains, and we just had a number of conversations. And I think that through those conversations and through their sort of, I would say, fairly rigorous due diligence on our tech, they selected us. We feel very grateful for that. I think, if you look at the priorities the Marshall Islands has, again, a lot of people might say, I haven't even heard of the Marshall Islands, but I think, the people who are in the CBDC space certainly have, knowing that they're sort of right there on the tip of the spear, and they are really looking to sort of redefine what the Marshall Islands are. They want to make sure that it's at the forefront of financial innovation. We have a lot of examples of other countries that have achieved a very disproportionate share of the financial ecosystem. And I think the Marshall Islands, I can't speak for them, but certainly there's ambitions there. They certainly need, they don't have their own they don't have their own currency. So they actually rely on the US dollar. So the ability to establish their own sovereign currency, again, a big thing. And with Algorand, they looked at how quickly could they get to market, how efficient is the protocol and the ability to distribute and manage their monetary policy. And they wanted a protocol that they had confidence was going to continue to deliver continuous innovation. And again, in parentheses, consciously opening parentheses here, but a lot of times what we've seen in the past is there's platforms that launch, and Algorand being sort of an original foundational platform that isn't created off of another existing protocol.
Right.
We've seen with launched blockchains in the past that sometimes they launch and there isn't a lot of ongoing innovation. I think one of the things that Algorand has spent a lot of time focused on and really impressed upon the Marshall Islands as well as SFB, that our commitment is to develop and continue to develop just absolutely fantastic innovation, and they'd seen that already. We launched our base protocol. We've launched, a series of new capabilities. We have another launch planned this year that I think will bring a number of additional very interesting pieces of technology to market. And so I think they felt very confident they were investing in a partner that was going to continue to evolve with them as they go. And so anyway, that was the sort of precursor. I'll pause there. If you want to know more, I'm certainly happy to talk about it. But that's how the relationship started, and that's our interpretation of why they ended up choosing us over other alternatives in the market today.
Got it. Yeah, and I think it surprised many folks, I think, who may not have heard of Algorand. Like, wait, wow, this is big. These islands choosing to build their digital currency. Yeah, for sure. So have you got any other countries maybe calling you up saying, hey, maybe we're interested as well? I don't know if you can disclose any information like that, but had to ask.
Here's what I would say, that let's just put it this way: the SFB team, I think, did a good job evaluating us, and we were very open with how we shared our capabilities. And why am I starting there? We demonstrated a particularly strong aptitude for understanding financial services, macroeconomics, all of that. We had a pretty easy to use platform and standard templates and SDKs. The way that you can manage the monetary policy within the actual protocol itself, but also within their currency, and set parameters on how it is distributed, et cetera. So I would say that those are the sort of factual capabilities that SFB and the Marshall Islands identified. And to your question, clearly things that we've seen with CBDCs, they want transparency, they want a level of control, and that isn't to say that it is centralized, but they obviously are dealing with real currency that is their national currency, and so they need to be able to manage their monetary policy. And I think we demonstrated that. They also need to trust that transactions are final and exchanges are final and all of that. And so we have definitely been active in the CBDC space. We think it is an amazing opportunity for the world. And, the statistic that we saw is that 80% of central banks or countries are actually investigating some form of digital currency. Now, that doesn't mean that 80% are all launching this year, but there's certainly a wake-up call that says this is a way to not just transform the financial system, but also start to provide prosperity and access and inclusion to their populations by giving everyone a chance to participate in the economy and really bank a number of the people who may be unbanked in their country. So aside from efficiency benefits, et cetera. So I think that making a medium length answer a little longer, I think that there's a lot of interest in CBDCs. We have a number of characteristics that countries, I think, find very attractive, and we're all in on being a part of those conversations.
That's excellent news to hear, and to your point, I think they will benefit a lot of the unbanked around the world. CBDCs, and with most folks having smartphones, but they don't have access to proper financial services.
Right.
So my next, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I mean, I was just going to give you a little the Marshall Islands is a great little example. They don't have a true bank sector. So, I mean, they actually have to ship cash across the islands. Wow. So, and they have to rely on check exchanges. So you think about just that little case where a digital currency that is their digital currency really transforms the lives of a lot of the citizens just there. And imagine the potential, in across the world.
Absolutely. So we know of some folks, maybe the Marshall Islands are kind of neck and neck with China and the digital yuan. We're seeing the digital dollar talks happening here. Do you think, maybe just your gut, or maybe you're not allowed to speak on it, but do you think the Marshall Islands will win this race?
I sure hope so. I mean, we're right there with them. I think that, to me, again, from my perspective, and what we keep emphasizing is that, we would love it if countries began to sort of rapidly embrace and adopt digital currencies for all the reasons we talked about. I think that for us, the focus is on getting it right. There's a lot of attention being paid to the Marshall Islands, and I think the goal is use the right tech, launch it in the right way, and make sure it's successful. Because by making the Marshall Islands successful, it becomes a proof point that this can work for everybody. So while we would love to have it happen tomorrow, I think that the plan is to launch this year. I think that's a reasonable goal, a very reasonable goal, and we're excited to hopefully hit that date and deliver the type of product and experience for them and for their citizens that we hope everyone else around the world is going to experience at some point soon.
Awesome. So moving ahead here, you guys also partnered with, I believe, Meld to tokenize gold from the Australian gold industry, which I find very amazing. And, on this channel, I talk about the token economy and the tokenization of different assets. So that's pretty big, tokenizing gold. Can you
It is.
share some details
It
there?
is. Yeah, I mean, look. So first of all, I'm really glad you brought Meld up because it also points to a philosophy that we've at Algorand really focused on from the beginning, and that is, and this is no disparagement to any other project out there. I think everyone probably has a similar goal. I think we had the benefit of being able to really focus on it from the beginning. But it's, how do you think about the difference between sort of real transactions versus nominal transactions, or real value versus nominal value in the world of blockchain? And a lot of times, it's very easy to sort of focus on just big numbers, and that's important, but it's not necessarily the whole story. And then, why am I starting there with your question about Meld? I think Meld is a great example of the type of partner that Algorand has spent time working with and hoping to cultivate more of in the future. Why do I say that? Well, I mean, so they're not just looking at building a gold-backed stablecoin, because there's a few out there, right?
Yeah.
Meld and the Melbourne Mint in particular, and a couple of other partners are trying to really think about the entire supply chain and providing both transparency to all parts of the chain. So if you think about the supply chain, you think of gold, you think here's this gold bar, and now we're going to tokenize it. Actually, what they're trying to do is there's an entire, there's refineries, there's mints, there's vaults, there's dealers, there's all of these people that it is a very labor intensive, very opaque process to see what is happening in the entire supply chain for gold. So what they're trying to do with the technology is, yes, build a stable coin that is gold backed, with unbelievably credible partners, but also trying to integrate all of that into the existing gold supply chain, so that there's seamless trading, quicker settlement, reducing the slow manual processes that currently exist in this very traditional but very valuable industry. And so for us at Algorand, it's like, what better partner to have than someone who is innovative, substantive, and building something that we believe will be enduring along the lines of what we were just talking about, transforming the way that financial systems and financial processes are actually conducted.
Wow. So you're certainly trying to go beyond just a gold-backed stable coin. You're actually maybe
Well, Meld is.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
Meld's aspirations is to really integrate the existing gold supply chain, and obviously the tip of the spear is to create the gold-backed stablecoin. But that being said, the aspirations that they've stated are very big, and so again, that's why I think Algorand has very big aspirations. And I think the fact that we have the capabilities to allow them to feel confident to come on and do all of that beyond just creating an asset, is really gratifying.
Wow. And moving ahead here, I'd love to talk about the Eterna Borderless Venture Studio, where I believe Algorand protocol is being used in a certain way. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, of course. So, we talked about the foundation's program and their grant program to help accelerate development on the Algorand protocol and platform. I think there's a number of vectors to be able to create that acceleration. One is obviously a grant program.
Mhm.
Another that we're excited about is this venture studio idea, where essentially it becomes an accelerator or an incubator for developers and entrepreneurs who want to build an application on Algorand.
Mhm.
And the businesses can range from the grants could be $100,000. If there's a really substantive business, the grants could be for more than that. But the idea is more of a deeper investment and focus on some specific businesses that Eterna will evaluate as if it was a VC. It is a VC fund, but as if the studio itself was its own sort of VC laboratory. And they did announce. I mean, there's a number that have been slotted already. Monerium, which is regulated e-money in Europe, that is in there. Planet Watch, which is an interesting CERN spinoff that does air quality monitoring. So it's not just that the studio's got an idea. It's actually been some investments that have happened already that we're particularly excited about, and that we think will continue to accelerate development and really bring in hopefully some very substantive and interesting businesses and entrepreneurs to the economy that we're building.
So on that note, I think we just saw the news yesterday, and I shot over the article link that Algorand is now part of the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance. Can you
Yep.
tell us a bit about that?
Well, it's interesting. So to give a little bit of context, I think a few things. One is, and I probably could have done I could always do a better job at everything. But let me sort of frame the vector into this question a little bit for you briefly. Is that if you think about Algorand and summing up what we have, what we're sort of lucky enough to have in terms of the technology is a protocol that is particularly adept at frictionless exchange of economic value. We're building on ramps, off ramps. We're building the ability to do actually transactions, at unbelievably quick and final transactions. So why am I starting the answer there? Is that because of that, we've seen a lot of interest in a number of different sectors of finance. We've seen sort of the DeFi space. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of use cases and examples of things there. Even thinking about MELD, for example, is a great example of decentralized finance. If you think about CBDC, we've spent a little bit of time talking about that. But there's also a very important sector called traditional finance. Perhaps you've heard of it. And so, if you look at that, those are traditional payment providers, financial institutions, people out there who know that there is a big thing that they can leverage for a whole bunch of different reasons, whether it's efficiencies, user experience, settlement, all of this type of thing. But I would say that in this particular case, we joined the blockchain the Wall Street Blockchain Association because one, they were actually looking for some fresh perspectives on protocols that they thought were more immediately ready for exploration and proof of concept and development. And I think Algorand falls in that for the traditional finance players. The other thing that we've seen is a lot of conversations we've had with a number of those players about being a part of their ecosystem. And we felt like it was a really great way for us to start not just participating in dialogue with membership, but also we're so passionate about the potential that Algorand has, or that blockchain has for the financial industry, that we'd like to also just have a voice in steering the thinking and the ways that these firms are hoping to leverage the capabilities that are now available to them. And being a part of the discussion was pretty exciting, and the Wall Street Blockchain Association was a way for us to be a part of that.
I love it. I think you're in the room with the right people. Certainly a big part of our financial industry and structure, Wall Street. And being at that table, I'm assuming can possibly get you the adoption that you need as well with different companies and whoever it may be. So that's exciting. So I would like to ask, and I know this may be you may not be able to disclose anything that's coming up, but I'm curious what else we can expect in 2020. I mean, you've done so much already.
Yeah, no. I think we are. I would say that a few things. One, on the technical side, again, I came to Algorand bringing hopefully a background of executing and delivering both product and value to market. And the reason I'm starting there, partnering with Steve Kokinos, who's founder of Fuse and who's CEO, and Silvio and a business team that's, we've tried to match the business team with the quality of our tech team. I think we've done a pretty good job there. What we are doing is continuously innovating. So to come back to your question, I expect several substantive launches again this year to continue to build out capabilities on the protocol. Obviously, we'll be sharing more about that soon, but I would just rely on, instead of it just being words that this is coming, I would say that, we've announced 2 previous launches in a certain time frame and we've hit them both. I expect to see that to continue and not have them just be little changing colors of the wallet, but rather, which is very important, by the way, but substantive. And I see that happening. We're coming up in the summer on the 1-year anniversary of our mainnet being live, which is exciting. We expect to continue to, sort of build, again, as I said, more technology there. The other thing I would say on the business side is, we've got a number of and I can't talk about them, but I would say pretty substantive and interesting use cases that could be pretty transformative, and excited to do that. And when I say transformative, I'm not just talking about, for Algorand, because I think Algorand's a good foundation for people, but I think for users and for the community is really first and foremost. And so that's where our focus is. It's just heads down, execute, and keep building good tech, and partners will come. We've seen that so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to say I'm very surprised with the progress and work you guys are doing. There's other projects out there which seem to be moving at snail's pace, but you guys are firing in all cylinders, it seems like. So there's a lot of great things happening. So I want to
My job's to get out of the way. I just try to get out of the way of all the smart people. That's it.
So I want to segue into getting your thoughts on what's going on in the U.S. with crypto blockchain regulations. It is moving at a snail's pace compared to other places in the world. But Steve Mnuchin said coming very soon, and I want to get your take on it. You're on the building side of things, and maybe you guys seen or heard certain things. Maybe you can take us behind the curtain. If not, what are your thoughts overall, and how do you see regulations impacting the market?
Well, I think I would say that, first of all, I agree with you, progress is being made. And, the pace of progress when it comes to governments anywhere, but in the US in particular, because that was the question. I think look, the government has to move at whatever pace it feels is appropriate for the citizens of its country to make sure that everything is being done right. And I think underneath a lot of it, it's very easy just to say that things are moving slowly because it's a big bureaucracy. But I also think there's a part of it which is just being responsible, and I think that's probably the right way to do it. We're involved in a number of interesting conversations around regulation. I think, as I think any responsible project should be, I think that we're hopeful that wherever it ends up, that it becomes, wherever the regulations end up, that it becomes something that rewards innovation and really allows for the U.S. to assert its leadership in the space versus continue to, I think, lag behind other countries. And that doesn't mean that the other countries we're talking about are just, ignoring lots of basic business practices. Not at all. I think obviously we would love to see a resting place here that allows for a culture of innovation and for the U.S. to really be a leader. And we're hopeful that will happen. And again, our focus is to just continue to, obviously listen and be a part of the discussions, but just continue to execute and build, substantive technology.
Absolutely. So, final question. Where do you see and I'll preface this by saying not financial or investment advice, but where do you see the market in 2 to 3 years? We've seen institutions getting in. What's your personal outlook? I know there's a pandemic going on, so we have to kind of get back to normal life. But, what's your thoughts on the market in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, so look, it's fun when you get into new spaces because I've been in, cloud computing and IoT, and then even what we're using now, video conferencing. I mean, I was sort of dating myself, but around that space for a long time. And so I would say that, why do I say that? Because, well, I think a lot of times in nascent industries, you kind of feel like it's the first time it's ever being done. And my perspective for blockchain is that it's following a lot of patterns that we've seen in other evolving and maturing industries. It started obviously at a place where it was opaque. People didn't know the difference between Bitcoin, the currency, and Bitcoin, the blockchain. That still exists today, by the way. But what we're seeing is a lot of speculation early on, and I would say unsubstantiated value. And so really emotion carried the market early more than I would say reason or sort of tangible metrics and measurement of value. So to answer your question very succinctly now, I think that we're going to see a maturing of the market. I think through traditional investment, traditional industries will move in. I think especially ironically out of the pandemic, there's a lot of, I think, increased interest to rethink existing processes and models. It has given a number of traditional companies pause to say, separate from the response to a pandemic, how should we respond to a disrupted marketplace? What do we need to have in place to encourage economic growth amidst unforeseen circumstances? And so I think, this is a wake-up call. It is also more, as we see the market evolve, more traditional businesses will come in. I think more pressure will be put on projects to demonstrate real value, real transactions, substantive technology, and hopefully the shift from emotion and sentiment sort of driving value at some level, which happens in traditional markets too. It'll become more of a sort of real, measurable and tangible value that people look to when they start selecting projects and they start selecting the ways that they're going to transform their businesses. So I see that happening over the next 2 to 3 years pretty heavily, and seeing some pretty well-known companies and projects announcing new initiatives that are pretty radically transformative along the lines of what we've seen with CBDCs and other things like that. That's probably the biggest trend.
Wow, Sean, a lot of great information, and I'm excited to see what else comes from Algorand this year, because you guys have done so many great things already. And as I mentioned, just being in the market and looking at other projects, I have not seen as much progress as you guys have made. So we'll love to have you back on as things progress on your end, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.